Most cruise passengers waste hundreds of dollars, stand in the wrong lines, and miss the best parts of the ship without even realizing it. And the truth is, cruise lines aren't exactly in a rush to correct you. In the next few minutes, I'm breaking down 30 cruise secrets that can completely change your trip, including one mistake that can ruin your entire cabin experience, and a simple trick that can save you hundreds before you even board. These aren't basic tips. These are the things experienced cruisers do differently. So if you want to travel smarter, avoid costly mistakes, and get the most out of every cruise, make sure to subscribe because this is just the beginning. 1. Prices can drop after you book. Most people think once they book a cruise, the price is locked in, but that's not always how it works. Cruise pricing constantly changes based on demand, promotions, and how full the ship is getting. That means the exact same cabin you booked could drop in price weeks or even days later. The difference is, experienced cruisers don't just book and forget. They keep checking. If the price drops before your final payment date, you can often call the cruise line or your travel agent and request a price adjustment. Sometimes that means paying less outright. Other times, it comes back as onboard credit you can use for drinks, dining, or excursions. The key is timing. Once you pass that final payment window, your options become limited or disappear entirely. So instead of assuming you got the best deal, stay proactive. Set a reminder, check prices weekly, and treat your booking like something that can still work in your favor. Because a 2-minute check could easily save you hundreds. 2. Drink packages are not always a deal. Unlimited drink packages sound like an easy win. Pay one price up front and enjoy cocktails, coffee, bottled water, whatever you want, whenever you want. But in reality, they don't always work out in your favor. To break even, you usually need to drink a surprisingly high number of beverages every single day. And that's where most people overestimate themselves. What sounds realistic before the cruise often feels very different once you're actually on board. Port days take up hours off the ship. Some days you're busy exploring, relaxing, or simply not drinking as much as you expected. And suddenly, that great deal starts working against you. It's also worth remembering that many cruises already include basic drinks, and some fares even bundle extras that reduce the value of upgrading. The smarter approach is simple: do the math before you commit. Think about your real habits, not your vacation expectations, because unlimited only feels like a deal if you actually use it. 3. Hidden fees add up fast. Cruises are often advertised as all-inclusive, but once you're on board, it becomes clear that not everything is covered. In fact, many of the extra costs are designed to feel small in the moment until they quietly add up. Gratuities are one of the biggest examples. They're usually added automatically each day, increasing your total without you actively noticing. Then there's Wi-Fi, which can be surprisingly expensive, especially on longer sailings. Specialty dining, spa treatments, shore excursions, premium drinks, each one feels optional, but together they can significantly raise the cost of your trip. And because everything is charged to your onboard account, it doesn't feel like real money while you're spending it. That's why one of the smartest habits you can develop is checking your account daily. It keeps you aware of where your money is going and helps you catch anything unexpected early. A cruise can still be great value, but only if you understand what's actually included and what isn't. 4. Future cruise credit stacking trick. One of the smartest moves experienced cruisers make doesn't happen before the trip, it happens during it. While you're on board, cruise lines often promote future cruise deposits. At first glance, it looks like a simple offer: put down a small deposit now and get some onboard credit or bonus perks for a future sailing. But there's a second layer most people don't realize. After you purchase that future cruise credit, you typically have a limited window to transfer the booking to a travel agent. And when you do, you often keep the original perks while gaining additional benefits from the agent like extra onboard credit or upgraded amenities. That means you're effectively stacking rewards without increasing your cost. The key is understanding the timeline and acting within that transfer window. Miss it, and the opportunity disappears. Used correctly, this strategy turns a simple deposit into a much more valuable deal and gives you an advantage most passengers never even know exists. 5. Jewelry shops are not cruise-owned. That elegant jewelry store on board might feel like part of the cruise experience, but in most cases, it's not actually run by the cruise line. These shops are typically operated by third-party companies, even though they carry the ship's branding. And that distinction matters more than people realize. If there's ever an issue with quality, pricing, or returns, the cruise line may not handle it directly. Instead, you'll be dealing with the retailer, often after your trip has already ended. On top of that, the tax-free and limited-time sale messaging can create a sense of urgency that doesn't always reflect real value. Prices can still be higher than what you'd find at reputable stores on land. The smarter approach is to slow down. Take photos, note the details, and compare prices before making a decision. Because once you leave the ship, resolving any problems becomes much more complicated, and what felt like a great deal in the moment might not hold up later. But even if you don't overspend, most people still waste time, and that's where cruises get frustrating. 6. Don't board first, board smart. It's tempting to choose the earliest boarding time available. It feels like you're getting more value out of your cruise, more time on board, more time to explore. But in reality, boarding first often creates the most stressful start to your trip. Early arrivals usually mean long lines at security, crowded waiting areas, and stepping onto a ship that isn't fully ready yet. Cabins are often still being prepared, which means you're carrying your bags around busy public spaces, competing for seats, and waiting for announcements. Instead of starting relaxed, you start rushed. A smarter approach is choosing a mid-window boarding time. By then, the initial surge has passed, check-in flows more smoothly, and the overall atmosphere feels calmer. In many cases, your cabin is already open or close to being ready, so you can settle in quickly. You're not losing time, you're improving the quality of it. Because the first hour of your cruise sets the tone for everything that follows, and starting calm is always better than starting overwhelmed. 7. Skip the buffet on day 1. The moment you step on board, most passengers head straight to the buffet. It feels like the natural first stop, an easy way to kick off the vacation. But what many people don't expect is just how chaotic that first meal can be. It's usually the most crowded dining experience of the entire cruise. Tables are hard to find, lines move slowly, and food trays empty faster than they're refilled. Instead of feeling relaxed, you're navigating crowds, waiting, and settling for whatever is still available. It's not exactly the experience people imagine. A better move is to look for alternative dining options. The main dining room is often open on embarkation day, and it's typically far less crowded. You get seated, served, and actually enjoy your first meal without the stress. Even if you prefer the buffet, simply waiting an hour can make a huge difference. Because starting your cruise with a calm, enjoyable meal sets a much better tone than diving straight into the busiest crowd on the ship. 8. Your luggage might not arrive until night. Many first-time cruisers expect their luggage to arrive at their cabin shortly after boarding. But that's rarely how it works. Suitcases are processed in stages, screened for security, and delivered throughout the day, sometimes not arriving until late afternoon or even evening. And if a bag gets flagged for inspection, it can take even longer. That's why relying on your main luggage for essentials can quickly turn frustrating. You might be ready to change, relax, or head to the pool, but you're stuck waiting. The simple solution is packing a smart carry-on. Include anything you'll need for the first several hours: medications, travel documents, chargers, a change of clothes, and even swimwear if you plan to start enjoying the ship right away. This way, you're not dependent on when your suitcase shows up. Because the difference between a smooth first day and a frustrating one often comes down to what you packed with you, not what you checked in. 9. Elevators will waste your time. On a cruise ship, elevators seem like the obvious way to get around, until you realize everyone else is thinking the same thing. During peak times, especially before dinner, after shows, or on busy sea days, elevator lines can become incredibly slow. You'll watch them stop on every floor, fill up quickly, and pass you by again and again. Meanwhile, most passengers completely overlook the stairs. For shorter distances, just a few decks up or down, taking the stairs is almost always faster. Midship stairwells in particular are often quiet and underused, even when elevators are packed. It also saves you from squeezing into crowded spaces with dozens of other guests. Unless you're traveling many decks or have mobility limitations, stairs can easily cut several minutes off your movement time throughout the day. It's a small habit change, but over the course of a cruise, it adds up to a smoother, less frustrating experience. 10. Leave the ship last. On the final morning of a cruise, there's a rush to get off the ship as early as possible. Passengers crowd elevators, fill hallways with luggage, and line up long before their departure time. It quickly turns into one of the most stressful moments of the entire trip. But here's what experienced cruisers do differently: they wait. Choosing a later disembarkation time allows the initial wave of passengers to clear out. Elevators are less crowded, lines move faster, and the entire process feels more relaxed. You can enjoy one last breakfast, take your time packing, and leave the ship without feeling rushed. Unless you have a tight travel schedule or an early flight, there's rarely a real advantage to being first off. In fact, rushing often creates more stress than it saves. Ending your cruise at a slower pace helps preserve that relaxed feeling just a little longer and makes the final impression of your trip just as enjoyable as the beginning. And what you don't know about your cabin could quietly ruin your sleep all week. 11. Cabin location matters more than price. When booking a cruise, most people focus on price, category, or whether they want a balcony. But what often gets overlooked is location, and that can have a bigger impact on your experience than the cabin itself. Where your room sits on the ship affects both noise and motion. Cabins positioned midship tend to feel more stable because they're closer to the ship's center of gravity. If the sea gets rough, that difference becomes very noticeable, especially for anyone sensitive to movement. Location also affects what you hear. A cabin might look perfect on paper, but if it's near high-traffic areas, elevators, or entertainment venues, noise can become a daily issue. The key is to look beyond the cabin and study the deck plan. Check what's above, below, and around your room before you book. Because the right location can mean restful nights and a smooth experience, while the wrong one can quietly disrupt your entire cruise. 12. Cabins under pool decks equals noise nightmare. Cabins directly beneath pool decks might seem convenient, but they often come with a hidden downside: noise. And not just occasional noise, but consistent, early morning disruption that many passengers don't expect. Before the sun even comes up, crew members begin preparing the deck for the day. Chairs are dragged across the floor, equipment is moved, and cleaning starts early. What sounds like a distant shuffle in theory can feel surprisingly loud when it's directly above your ceiling. Then, as the day begins, foot traffic increases. Guests walking, running, and gathering overhead create a steady stream of sound that carries into your cabin. It's not something you'll see in the brochure, but it's something you'll definitely hear once you're on board. That's why checking what's above your cabin matters just as much as the room itself. Because a great deal on paper doesn't feel like a great deal if it comes with a daily wake-up call you didn't plan for. 13. Cabin air isn't fully isolated. Most people assume that the air inside their cabin is completely separate, like a typical hotel room. But on a cruise ship, the ventilation system works differently. Air circulates through shared ducts, which means it isn't always fully isolated between cabins. Occasionally, smells from nearby rooms, like food, perfume, or cleaning products, can drift through the system. It doesn't happen constantly, but when it does, it can be noticeable, especially for guests who are sensitive to scents. This isn't a flaw, it's just how large-scale ventilation systems operate on ships designed to accommodate thousands of people. There are simple ways to manage it. If you have a balcony, opening the door briefly can help refresh the space. Running the bathroom fan can also improve airflow. Some travelers even bring small air fresheners or portable purifiers for added comfort. It's a small detail, but understanding how the system works helps you adjust quickly and keeps your cabin feeling comfortable throughout the trip. 14. You can switch cabins if you act fast. Many passengers assume that once they step into their cabin on embarkation day, that room is locked in for the entire cruise. But that's not always the case. If you notice a problem, whether it's persistent noise, strong vibrations, or an issue with the room itself, you may have the option to move. The key is acting quickly. Waiting a few days and hoping the issue improves usually works against you. By then, most cabins are occupied and options become limited. Instead, as soon as you recognize a problem, head to guest services and explain it clearly. If availability allows, they may be able to offer an alternative cabin. It's never guaranteed, but early action gives you the best chance. Cruise lines want guests to be comfortable, but they can only help if they know there's an issue. Speaking up early can turn a frustrating situation into a much better experience for the rest of your trip. 15. Do not disturb can trigger checks. The Do Not Disturb sign on your cabin door feels like a simple request for privacy, And it is, but it's not completely invisible to the crew. Cruise ships operate with strict safety protocols, and part of that involves monitoring general cabin activity. If a room shows no movement, no card usage, and no interaction for an extended period, it can raise concern. In those cases, crew members may perform a welfare check to make sure everything is okay. It's not about being intrusive, it's about ensuring passenger safety in an environment where thousands of people are on board at once. Using the sign during rest or private time is completely normal. The key is avoiding leaving it up continuously for long stretches without any activity. Understanding how this system works helps you balance privacy with awareness. Because even small things on board are designed with safety in mind, whether you notice them or not. Now let's talk about something everyone looks forward to, the food. But even that has hidden tricks. 16. You can order multiple dishes. Dining on a cruise isn't like a typical restaurant where you're expected to pick just one option and stick with it. In the main dining room, the menu is designed for exploration, and ordering more than one dish is completely normal. If 2 appetizers catch your attention, you can try both. If you're deciding between the steak and the seafood, you don't have to choose, you can order each. Even desserts aren't limited to a single plate. This flexibility is part of what makes cruise dining feel indulgent, but many passengers hold back simply because they assume there are limits. The key is approaching it thoughtfully. Order what you're genuinely curious about rather than overloading the table. If something doesn't meet expectations, it's perfectly acceptable to request an alternative. The experience is meant to be enjoyable, not restrictive. Because when you understand how dining actually works on board, you stop treating it like a regular meal and start treating it like one of the highlights of the entire trip. 17. Buffet food isn't always fresh. Buffets are one of the most popular dining options on a cruise, but not every dish sitting out is at its best. The quality of buffet food often depends on timing, temperature, and how quickly items are being replaced. During peak hours, trays are constantly opened, handled, and exposed to air. As food sits out, it can move away from the ideal temperature range, and that's when both quality and safety start to decline. Some dishes may look fine at a glance, but feel lukewarm or dried out, especially if they've been sitting longer than expected. That's why being selective matters. Stations where food is cooked fresh, like omelets, pasta, or carved meats, tend to have higher turnover and better quality. These options spend less time sitting out and are prepared closer to when you actually eat them. A quick visual check can also tell you a lot. If something looks untouched or has been sitting for a while, it's usually better to skip it. Because choosing wisely at the buffet can make the difference between a great meal and one you regret later. 18. Port day equals dining discounts. When a cruise ship docks at a port, most passengers head ashore, and that changes the dynamic on board in a big way. Restaurants that are usually busy suddenly become much quieter, and empty tables mean lost revenue. To fill those seats, some specialty restaurants quietly offer discounts or special pricing during port days. These deals aren't always advertised clearly. You might not see them highlighted in the daily schedule or promoted in the app. In many cases, you have to ask. Stopping by a restaurant desk or checking once the ship is in port can reveal offers like reduced lunch pricing, bundled menus, or added extras at no additional cost. The experience itself doesn't change. You're still getting the same food and service, just without the usual crowds and at a better value. It's a simple timing advantage most people overlook. Because when demand drops, opportunities open up, and knowing when to take advantage of that can make your cruise feel more premium without increasing your budget. 19. Room service isn't always free. Room service feels like one of those small luxuries that should be included in a cruise, but depending on the line and the time you order, it isn't always free. Some ships offer complimentary options, especially for basic breakfast items, but many charge service fees or per item costs for certain menus or late-night orders. It's easy to assume everything is included, place an order, and only notice the charge later on your onboard account. That's why understanding what's covered ahead of time makes a difference. Menus are usually available in the cabin or through the ship's app, and they'll indicate which items come with a fee. Taking a moment to check can help you avoid unexpected charges. Room service can still be a great convenience, especially when you want a quiet meal or a relaxed start to the day. But knowing how it works ensures it stays a choice, not a surprise. Because even small charges feel different when you didn't plan for them. And what happens off the ship? That's where a lot of people make expensive mistakes. 20. Private islands push paid extras. When your cruise stops at a private island, everything is designed to feel effortless and inviting. As soon as you arrive, you'll see cabanas for rent, water parks, guided experiences, and premium beach areas being promoted as must-do upgrades. It creates the impression that you need to spend more to fully enjoy the day. But what often gets overlooked is that many of the best parts are already included. Beach access, lounge chairs, buffet-style meals, and plenty of space to relax are typically part of your cruise fare. You can swim, explore, and enjoy the scenery without paying anything extra. The paid options are there for convenience and exclusivity, not necessity. Taking a moment to explore what's already available before booking add-ons can completely change how you approach the day. Because sometimes the most relaxing experience isn't the one you pay for, it's the one you already have access to. 21. Tender ports can be exhausting. Not every port allows the ship to dock directly at the pier. In some locations, passengers are transported to shore using smaller boats, known as tenders. On the surface, it sounds simple, but in practice, it can be more tiring than expected. Lines often form early, and the process can involve waiting, standing, and navigating steps between moving surfaces. For some passengers, especially those with limited mobility or balance concerns, it can quickly become uncomfortable. What many people don't realize is that assistance is often available, but only if you ask in advance. Cruise lines can provide priority tender access or assign you to a more manageable group, helping reduce wait times and crowd pressure. The key is speaking with guest services before the process begins, not after lines have already formed. Planning ahead turns what could be a stressful start into a much smoother experience. Because sometimes it's not the destination that's challenging, it's how you get there. 22. Cruise excursions versus DIY. When it comes to exploring ports, most passengers face the same decision. Book a cruise-organized excursion or plan something independently. Cruise excursions offer convenience and structure. Transportation is arranged, timing is coordinated, and there's a level of security in knowing the ship won't leave without you if delays happen. But that convenience often comes at a higher cost, and the experience can feel more controlled, with larger groups and tighter schedules. On the other hand, exploring on your own gives you flexibility. You can move at your own pace, choose exactly what you want to see, and sometimes spend less overall. The trade-off is responsibility. You're in charge of timing, navigation, and getting back to the ship on schedule. Neither option is universally better. It depends on your priorities. Understanding the balance between control and convenience helps you choose what fits your style, rather than simply defaulting to what's offered first. But here's the part most people don't think about. What can actually go wrong? 23. Medical care on board is expensive. Most people don't think about medical care when planning a cruise, but if something does happen, the costs can be much higher than expected. Shipboard medical centers operate more like private clinics than included services, and even a basic consultation can come with a significant charge. Simple treatments, medications, or tests can quickly add up. And if a situation becomes more serious, requiring evacuation to a hospital on land, the cost can escalate dramatically. Airlifts or emergency transport aren't cheap, especially when you're far from shore. It's not something that happens often, but when it does, the financial impact can be overwhelming if you're not prepared. That's why travel insurance plays such an important role. It can cover medical treatment, emergency evacuation, and even trip interruptions, protecting you from expenses that would otherwise come out of pocket. It may feel like an extra step during planning, but compared to the potential cost of an emergency, it's one of the smartest decisions you can make before setting sail. 24. Cruise contracts favor the company. When you book a cruise, you agree to a contract that most people never fully read. It's easy to accept the terms and move on, but those details matter more than many passengers realize. Cruise contracts are written primarily to protect the company. They often include clauses that allow itinerary changes, schedule adjustments, or missed ports without compensation in certain situations. What looks like a guaranteed plan is, in reality, subject to change. There are also rules around passenger conduct and health. In specific cases, the ship's captain has the authority to confine a guest to their cabin or even remove them from the ship if necessary. Legal matters can be more complicated as well. Some contracts specify where disputes must be handled, which may not be where you live. None of this means cruising is unsafe, but it does mean expectations should be realistic. Taking a few minutes to understand the key terms gives you clarity and helps avoid surprises later on. 25. Itineraries can change anytime. When you book a cruise, it's natural to look forward to specific destinations. Each port feels like a promised highlight of the trip. But in reality, cruise itineraries are plans, not guarantees. Weather conditions, strong winds, port congestion, or operational factors can all lead to last-minute changes. A stop might be delayed, replaced, or skipped entirely if safety becomes a concern. While it can be disappointing, these decisions are made with the overall well-being of passengers and crew in mind. The key is going in with the right mindset. Instead of focusing on a single destination, it helps to view the entire journey as the experience. Many seasoned travelers learn to stay flexible and embrace the unexpected. Sometimes, a change in route introduces a destination you wouldn't have chosen yourself, but end up enjoying just as much. Because on a cruise, adaptability isn't just helpful, it's part of what makes the experience smoother and more enjoyable. 26. Not all ships have overboard detection. Cruise ships are equipped with advanced technology, but one area still surprises many passengers. Not every ship has a fully automated system that instantly detects when someone goes overboard. In many cases, detection relies on surveillance cameras and eyewitness reports. That means response time can depend on someone seeing the incident happen or noticing that a person is missing. Serious incidents are rare, and ships are designed with high railings and safety features to prevent accidents. But understanding this limitation highlights the importance of personal awareness. Simple actions, like avoiding leaning over railings, not climbing barriers, and staying mindful of your surroundings, make a difference. This is especially important in crowded areas or late at night. The environment may feel relaxed, but it's still open water. A little caution goes a long way in ensuring that your cruise remains safe, comfortable, and exactly what it's meant to be. And now, the secrets most passengers never even hear about. 27. Wi-Fi flash sales happen mid-cruise. Most passengers buy their Wi-Fi package before the cruise begins, assuming that's the best price they'll get. But once you're on board, pricing doesn't always stay the same. Cruise lines sometimes release short, unadvertised promotions inside the ship's app after the initial rush of buyers has passed. These flash sales can appear mid-cruise and may offer lower daily rates, upgraded plans, or bundled options that weren't available earlier. Because they're not heavily promoted, many people never notice them. That's where a simple habit makes a difference. Checking the onboard app once or twice a day can reveal these limited-time offers. On many ships, if you already purchased a package and see a better deal, you may be able to cancel and rebook at the lower rate without penalty. It only takes a minute, but the savings can add up, especially on longer sailings. Internet at sea is rarely cheap, so staying alert to pricing changes gives you a small but valuable advantage and ensures you're not paying more than necessary for the same connection. 28. Laundry discount days exist. Laundry services on a cruise can seem expensive at first, which is why many passengers either overpack or avoid using them altogether. But what often goes unnoticed is that some ships quietly offer discounted laundry days during the sailing. Instead of paying per item, you may be able to fill an entire bag for a reduced flat rate. It's a simple offer, but it can make a big difference, especially on longer trips where fresh clothes become more important. The catch is that these deals aren't always clearly advertised. If you're not looking for them, it's easy to miss the opportunity. That's why asking your cabin steward early in the cruise can help. They usually know if and when a discount day is coming and can give you a heads up so you're ready. Timing matters, because the offer is often limited to a short window. Planning around it allows you to refresh your wardrobe without overspending and without carrying more than you actually need. 29. Behind-the-scenes tours are real. There's an entire side of the ship that most passengers never see. Areas like the bridge, engine control room, and main galley operate quietly in the background, keeping everything running smoothly, but they're usually off-limits. What many people don't realize is that access to these spaces is sometimes possible. Certain ships offer behind-the-scenes tours to a limited number of guests. These experiences aren't always prominently advertised, and availability can be restricted, which is why they often go unnoticed. In some cases, Access is offered to loyal passengers or those with specific status levels. But other times, it simply comes down to asking early, stopping by guest services, and inquiring about any technical or backstage tours can open the door to something completely different from the typical cruise experience. Even if there's a small fee, the insight into how the ship operates, from navigation to large-scale food preparation, can be one of the most memorable parts of the entire trip. 30. The first and last sea days are trap days. The first and last sea days of a cruise are often the busiest, and that's not by accident. These are the moments when cruise lines concentrate their promotions the most. You'll see spa deals, dining packages, photo sessions, and special offers everywhere you turn. Because everyone is on board with no port distractions, demand spikes quickly, and it creates a sense of urgency to book before things sell out. It's easy to get caught up in that energy and make quick decisions without thinking them through. But experienced cruisers approach these days differently. Instead of reacting to the first wave of promotions, they observe, compare, and wait. Mid-cruise, when the initial rush fades, crowds are lighter and offers can become more relaxed or even slightly better. Understanding this pattern helps you stay in control of your choices instead of being influenced by timing and pressure. Because the difference between overspending and making smart decisions often comes down to knowing when not to act. Now you know what most cruise passengers don't. The difference between an average cruise and an incredible one isn't luck, it's understanding how everything actually works behind the scenes. Which of these surprised you the most? Are you going to cruise like everyone else, or like someone who actually knows the system? 16. You can order multiple dishes. Dining on a cruise isn't like a typical restaurant where you're expected to pick just one option and stick with it. In the main dining room, the menu is designed for exploration, and ordering